Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup, where Dives and Al ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. This is the week for September 25th, 2022, and that means it's episode 26. This week, we've got the Netflix Sins of Our Mother miniseries, episode 2. We're going to give you a review of that. We've also got the LDS Church has donated $5 million to Unicef. Give you a follow-up there. And Elder David Bednar has decided he's going to go live on Instagram with a Q&A. We're going to see what all happened with that. The LDS leaders have also joined an open letter to Floridians calling for peace with the LGBTQ community. And also, General Conference is coming up next weekend, so we're going to ignite your momentum with that and so much more. You ready to go, Dives?
I am. My momentum is getting ignited. I am getting excited for this General Conference weekend. I'm almost as excited about General Conference this weekend as I am about the Mormon joke of the week, which is, what do you get when you cross LDS and LSD?
I don't know. What could it be?
A high priest, of course. Okay, so hey,
like
if you want to get in touch with us, we're at www.MormonNewsRoundup.org, or drop us an email. We're at kolob@MormonNewsRoundup.org. That's KOLOB at MormonNewsRoundup.org. Now, so a couple of follow-ups here from last week. We have BYU played Oregon last week, and there was a bunch of people in the stands who were chanting F the Mormons, and that received a national news coverage. And Ethan Stone 5 days ago on SaturdayDownSouth.com wrote an article that said that LDS Oregon prospect leaves at halftime of BYU game following the F the Mormons chat. So this individual here was a quarterback target for Oregon. Mm-hmm. And he was a Latter-day Saint, and he decided that he was going to leave after the Oregon fans were chanting to F the Mormons.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I mean, that's the problem is, maybe everybody from BYU, well, at least the vast majority of them are LDS, right? I mean, there's a very small, slim minority that are not, but the vast majority of the LDS of the BYU students are LDS, but they forget that the LDS extends beyond just BYU. It's also, they've got students all over the world, and that can be offensive because you're going after a religion.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, these fans are taking ignorance to the next level here.
Yeah, sure.
The Oregon coaches said that they'd be lying if they didn't think that it had some kind of an impact on the program.
Yeah, for real.
So, I mean, these fans are really, really, really ignorant. And by the way, that brings us to the next article from the follow-up, which is on the registerguard.com. And this was published on September 20th. And it says, condemnations issued, but no talk of discipline for the University of Oregon fans' explicit chant at the BYU game. So everybody keeps waiting. Hey, what's going to happen to these students? Because we got them red-handed here. We got them on video. We know who these folks are. Unlike the BYU Duke volleyball game, we got them in cold blood here. Okay,
yeah,
that's okay. Maybe that's a little too far, but we got them on video.
But even so, like BYU was very quick to get that. I guess he's a UVU student, but he's banned from going to BYU games for good, I guess.
Yeah, and the University of Oregon, they did make an official statement. They said it was offensive and disgraceful, but they haven't done anything.
Yeah, that's a little weak sauce, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so great. You condemn the behavior of the fans. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, for real.
If you're chanting offensive things, like I said last week, I think something should be done to these students. I think it should be very simple. They should be escorted out of the stadium, and they should just be banned from all of the home football games for the rest of the year. There's like 4 or 5 more football games. Sure. They should just be banned. If they want to go to a home volleyball game, I don't have a problem with it. And I just think that sends a message that says, hey, if you condemn the behavior, if you have zero tolerance for it, you think it's offensive and disgraceful, then do something about it.
Yeah, for real. I mean, they can do something about this. Anything, really.
Yeah, I mean,
nobody's calling for heads on a pike. This is just,
no.
It's reasonable. Ban them for the rest of the season, and then next season they can try it again.
Sure. So the University of Oregon, they said that, let's see, directly harassing someone based on their religious beliefs violates their core value of full inclusion as a diversity. That's a wonderful sentiment there from the interim president.
Yeah.
And even the University of Oregon Student Association also had a response that says, we're extremely disappointed with the actions of some of the fans. Everyone could not be more disappointed. It's never acceptable. We are absolutely shocked. We are outraged. We condemn this. Well, what are you going to do? Will there be any discipline or what?
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like just saying we condemn this is really doing anything. It's just, stating where your stance is, but it's not like these guys are powerless. These guys
No.
run the whole show there.
Yeah, in fact, the University of Oregon, the handbook there, it says that campus community members who violate the policies in the stadiums, they may be excluded from campus and lose the right to participate in university-sponsored program activities. So it's already part of the handbook. They can just go to the handbook. They can do something about it. Why haven't they done anything about it? I don't understand. Something needs to be done.
The handbook, right? Yeah.
To do something, that's unacceptable. Now, speaking of football here, I'm actually here in Happy Valley, Al. I know this is your favorite place.
Happy Valley, Utah County.
You betcha. I'm in Provo. I'm only just I'm only a half mile from the Cougar Stadium, and last night
in the great and spacious beehive, you are right next to the queen bee.
Yep. That's right. I guess I'm just one of the workers then. Actually, maybe I'm one of the slaves. Actually.
Drone bee.
Yeah, I think I'm probably not a worker. I would probably either be a drone or I'm one of the babies who was cast off as deformed. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But we had the football game that happened. BYU football played Oregon last night, and I was wondering because I was looking around outside before the game started, and I noticed that the Y wasn't lit, which is very unusual for a BYU football game. Normally, they light that thing. It's supposed to, galvanize the community.
Yeah.
And it wasn't lit. And I was like, what is going on here? And I realized that from our article here on DeseretNews.com, this is from Tad Welch, and this was published on September 25th, 2022. And it says, healing continues as 2 members of the Black 14 light the Y and receive a warm reception at the BYU Wyoming game. So who's the Black 14, Al?
As I recall, this was the Black 14 were these were the Black University of Wyoming players that BYU refused to play against back in the 70s because they had black people on their team.
Yeah, no, actually, the shoe's slightly on the other foot. The Wyoming players refused to play BYU because of
I'm backwards there. Sorry.
Yes, because of the race and the priesthood ban back in 1969. They said, "Hey, we're not going to play BYU because we think BYU is racist and we want to protest it." And so they were kicked off of there. They were banished for going to ask their coach if they could wear black armbands during the game to protest a now lifted ban on blacks. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those guys had serious repercussions that went along with their careers.
Yeah.
And now they're lighting the Y. This is quite a turnaround.
Yeah, that's a big step in a direction. Probably the right direction. Sure.
Yeah, in fact, it said that the being banished from their team. So they said, hey, we're not going to play BYU unless you let us wear the armbands. And they said, no, you can't do that. And they were banished off their team. They said it was incredibly painful for those players. Yeah. And a lot of them harbored anger for a decade. Now, the 2 that came back to light the Y was Griffin and Hamilton. And they had even protested the church at their local institutes in Wyoming. And they, just harbored a lot of anger. And the church has reached out to the Black 14 and them in particular. And they are trying to break down the barriers and trying to get them to reconcile and put the past behind them, which I think is a nice sentiment.
Yeah.
The question that I have, I do wonder about this because it says the University of Wyoming apologized to the Black 14 in 2019. Mm-hmm. Should the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or BYU also apologize to them?
Oh, that's a good question because I mean, on the one hand, I think that apologies are never useless or meaningless. This is something that the church could do. I don't think the church will. It seems like the church has really embraced the stance of not ever apologizing because apologizing seems to be an admission of guilt. So I don't think it'll happen, but I think they should. Sure.
Yeah, and of course, it puts the church in a difficult position, because if you apologize for the race and priesthood ban and for the actions, then it seems to be saying that the race and the priesthood ban was wrong, and that's
Exactly.
not the church's position.
No.
The church's position is that the race, the temple and the priesthood ban was correct. It was from God, and so apologizing it just puts them into a big quandary.
Yeah. So any kind of apology that the church would give wouldn't be the apology that people are looking for. I'll say that.
That's probably true. Let me read a little bit from the article. 2 members of the Black 14 ceremoniously lit the Y on the mountain above LaBelle Edwards Stadium on Saturday night before the BYU Wyoming game. 2 of the least likely Y lighters in BYU football history. And according to the athletic director, he said, quote, "It's a miracle," end quote. "If people want to see a miracle, we saw one tonight," end quote. Was that miracles, Al, they're not what they used to be. I can just tell you that right now.
Well, the standard for a miracle has certainly gotten weaker over the years, hasn't it?
I mean, this is far from the water into wine. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
They were driven up to the Y.
Yeah.
and they lit the Y. I don't know. That doesn't strike me as much of a miracle. I don't know.
Yeah, they allowed people of color up on Y Mountain, so good for them, I guess. I don't know. Miracle?
That seems to be taking it too far. But we, listeners, to our listeners out there, we do have the Mormon News Roundup poll, which is available on Anchor. And we want to know if you also think that this is we also want to know what you think about all this football. The football is big in the news. I get these, the feeds into my email address, and I was going to tell you, you get a lot. The BYU football team, that is big nationally. It generates a lot of news.
Sure is.
So let's look at our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week here. Will you read us the question here? And if you're a listener out there, you go on to Anchor, you can submit your response to our poll of the week here.
Yep, we certainly value our listeners' opinions on these polls. That's why we put them up. So please do go over to Anchor and give us your vote. So, question this week: what should happen to the University of Oregon students who chanted "F the Mormons" at a recent BYU football game?
Okay, is it number 1?
Number 1, they should be expelled, but first give them a copy of the Book of Mormon signed by Zach Wilson.
That seems like that seems like about the right thing that should be done. Zach
seems
Wilson,
a little extreme, I think, but expel them and then make them read the Book of Mormon signed by Zach Wilson.
That's a little too far.
That is a little far. Okay.
That's a little far, but it does seem like if you do kick him out of the football game before you march him out of the front gate, you should hand him over a copy of the Book of Mormon. That does seem like
give him some sort of consolidation prize, right?
Yeah, and especially if it's signed by Zach Wilson. Hey, that's pretty valuable.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Or is it number 2?
Number 2 needs to be saying, okay. If by chance you meet a bigot, do not let him stay.
Yeah, don't let him stay in the stadium.
That's right. So you quickly turn him upside down and evict him out of the. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, kick him out. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do not let him stay. That makes a lot of sense. That seems a little bit more reasonable, maybe than number 1, or is it number 3?
Number 3, Jesus said to forgive others, so should we.
There's a lot to be said. I think you're supposed to give what is it, 70 times 7?
Yeah, as far as I understand. So I mean, yeah, this is his first offense, as far as we know. Let's forgive it. Okay.
Well, you have to count up the number of F-bombs. There was quite a few in there. I don't know if there was 400.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if there was 490 of them. What is 70 times 7? I'm not sure how many there were. But probably not that many.
Probably not that many. So I figure he's within that 409. Yeah, we can forgive him, right?
Okay. All right. Or is it number 4?
Number 4, the power of Christ compels you to be forcibly expelled from the football stadium. Exorcise the demons. Yep.
Yeah, the power of Christ compels you to be forcibly expelled from the football stadium. That makes a lot of sense to me. So, what is your response? By the way, Al, I know this is an imperfect. It's an imperfect poll, but it's an imperfect podcast.
Yeah, I like number 2. If by chance you meet a bigot, do not let him stay.
Okay. I'm not sure if the people who chanted that were bigots necessarily, and maybe they got caught up in it. It's hard to say. Can't judge a person's heart. But that does seem pretty. That seems pretty good there. And by the way, we post all of these. We post all of our episodes are on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. Come over, drop us a like, drop us or rate us on iTunes, rate us on Anchor, leave us a 5-star review, drop us a comment, drop us a subscription on YouTube, or we're also on Twitter, and we would greatly appreciate that. And that takes us. Those are all of our follow-ups from last week. Did I leave anything off for the follow-ups from last time, Al?
I think we got one more. It's not from last week. This is a follow-up from earlier in the summer, though.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And you actually covered that article. So what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So this is actually the man. So that dad who is in Ogden, he's been convicted of assaulting his son for refusing to serve an LDS mission.
Wow.
So, yeah, there is a follow-up here from Mark Schenefelt from the Standard Examiner, which the Standard Examiner is the local newspaper for Brigham City, Utah. And let's see, yeah, this did take place in Ogden, but I guess, well, no, the Standard Examiner is the Ogden paper. I'm sorry, my mistake. Okay. So anyway, he's been found guilty of assaulting his 18-year-old son after his son refused to serve a mission. Let's see, the judge delivered the verdict against Scott Keith Warner, was the dad, and they took him to court on September 8th, and he's been he's going to be going to jail for a while.
Yeah, you know what? We did cover this. I think it was about 2 months ago when this story originally broke. And now he's been sentenced. You know what? The more that I thought about this, the more that I think that the correct sentence for this, Al, is exactly 2 years.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Obviously, this is an abominable. This is a bad story. Okay, we're joking around, but this is not a good story. Just because your son doesn't want to go on a mission doesn't mean that you should. He assaulted him, and he was convicted of 3rd-degree felonies of aggravated assault. That's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, and that you might be right there with the penalty, because it can have a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
he's guilty. I guess he hasn't been sentenced yet.
Nope.
Yeah, but that's certainly a possibility, as he might, and I think it is appropriate. 2 years. Why not?
Yeah, in fact, he knocked his son to the ground. He struck the victim's head against the wall repeatedly, and he squeezed his neck with both hands.
Yeah, he did a number on his son. I mean, and his whole thing was, well, my son took the first punch. Well, I mean, come on, dude. You're twice his size. And you're the dad, okay? So,
hey, look, if I could have just talked to this guy before, I could have just told him that not only has no member of the current first presidency went on a mission, not one of them did.
That's right.
President Nelson, he didn't go on a mission.
Nope.
President Oaks, he didn't go on a mission. President Eyring, he didn't go on a mission.
That's right.
And the last first presidency didn't go on a mission. That was back when Uchtdorf was in the first presidency. He didn't go on a mission either. So the last 2 first presidencies, they didn't go on mission. So if it was good enough for them, then maybe it's good enough for your run-of-the-mill son.
You're right. We haven't had a return missionary as the president of the church since Gordon B. Hinckley, and that's well over a decade ago now.
Was Thomas Monson? He was a mission president in Canada.
Yeah, he was a mission president, but did he serve a mission? I don't think he did. I can't remember. Well, now we're going to have something else to follow up next week, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to need to put that on the follow-ups. You think that I know that, but the more that you say that, maybe
on our follow-ups here. I mean, my whole stance with this is, if your kid doesn't want to serve a mission, don't let it come to blows. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, no matter what you think or what you believe. It's not more important than your family. Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
There's
not.
my 2 cents. Okay.
I think you're right, though. I don't think that Thomas S. Monson went on a mission. Otherwise, we'd probably be able to recall it.
Probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a long time. And President Hinckley, he passed away in what? He started in 1990.
I want to say 2010.
I think it might have been a little bit earlier than that, but
maybe 2008.
I think maybe sometime around there. Yeah. So obviously it's been 15 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So I can't. I know that people think that important. But if it's not important enough for the top leadership to do it, then I wonder if it's important enough for the rest of the folks to do it. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. I mean, it's just kind of do as I say, not as I do, right?
Right. I don't think that's a good approach.
Hey everybody, it's D-Vase here. Thanks so much for listening to the Mormon News Roundup. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Allow me to explain. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Now, this is actually our first article of the week here is sort of a follow-up here, but it's sort of not. It's This is from Holly Lundberg on September 20, 2022, and it says the Tabernacle Choir's tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. So over the weekend, the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, formerly known as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, shared a moving spoken word tribute honoring the late British monarch Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away. So, every single time you have the music and the spoken word, you have the feature, you have the featured moment there that's like 3 minutes long where Lloyd Newell, he gives you some kind of an inspirational message. They honored the British monarch, the late British monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, who we discussed in great detail when she passed away 2-3 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so this is some of the message that he said in his announcement. And he said, quote, "She often spoke of the Christian ideals that inspired her. She explained that for me, the teachings of Christ and my own personal accountability before God provide a framework in which I try to lead my life. I, like so many of you, have drawn great comfort in difficult times from Christ's words and example. And while the world changed dramatically over the decades, the Queen remains steadfast and strong, an emblem of grace and goodness to her people and to the world," end quote. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? These comments and this tribute to the late Queen?
I think that Queen Elizabeth II was a pretty decent person, as far as a monarch goes. I mean, I don't know that in this day and age there's room for a monarchy. I don't know that that's the appropriate way to govern, but I mean, I think she was a pretty decent human being until it came to, let's run an empire. I think she did a pretty decent job, but I think that we're going to see under Charles III, we're going to see a dissolving or something. I don't know about complete dissolution of the monarchy, but I think something's going to change.
Well, I hope a lot of things change. If Queen Elizabeth II had just been your local Relief Society president and she had passed away, then I would be all in favor. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
She did a lot of charity work, and she did a lot of good for a lot of people throughout the world. She was someone who her personal ethics were unquestionable. And so she had been a local Relief Society president or even, just like a Mother Teresa type person. Great. Let's pay great homage. The problem is that we discussed this in great detail about 2 weeks ago, that she represents a reprehensible power system that is based on the reason that she had the wealth that she has was that she squeezed it illegally out of her subjects, and then she reigns illegitimately only by virtue of her birthright. How is that grace and goodness, and how is that something to be strived for? How is that an example to be lifted up into the world? I don't understand.
Yeah. D-Vase, you make a good point. I think that maybe the good stepping off point for the monarchy would have been when her uncle abdicated the throne and her dad took over as George VI. I think that would have been a good time for them to say, the 20th century is a monarchy really necessary or relevant, and just dissolve it there instead of pass it on to the next in line.
Absolutely. The monarchy is worth like $30 billion. That would have been a good time to say, you know what? We want to give this money back to the people who we illegally took it from.
Yeah.
And we're not going to sustain a system that disenfranchises people and that represents barbarism and was built on the skulls of thousands upon thousands of people who fought and died to keep those monarchs and those tyrants on the throne for millennia.
Yeah, and this is skulls of people all over the world of every race, creed, and nationality before they were subdued, and then and some of them, like even recently, the Falkland Islands in the 80s, they tried to secede, and the monarchy didn't want to let them secede, so they had a big war down there, and a lot of people lost their lives for nothing, just because people wanted just because another one of the colonies wanted their freedom and independence.
Yeah, you look back and when especially in the not so recent past when England took over India, 300 million people at the time that India had, and they took it over with, I don't know, like 800,000 Englishmen or maybe 100,000, not sure the exact number. And there was massacres, and they just had no right to be there. She embodies that. Did she ever repudiate that? Did she say that was wrong? Not that I remember.
I mean, eventually she gave India back their independence, but at the same time, it was like, well, let's say something about this, because this is, something that's needs to. There's words that need to be said when these things happen, right?
Yeah, I don't understand how the church continues with multiple statements, and the music and the spoken word continues to lift up. A monarchy is a system, as we read in the Book of Mormon. You had the kingmen, you had the freemen.
Yeah.
The idea of maintaining kings,
this is everything against what the church teaches, right?
Yeah, it's everything against what Joseph Smith taught. It's everything against what is in the Book of Mormon, and it's everything against what normal morality would be. I'm very confused by this statement, and I hope that that we don't see any more tributes to any dictators, any unelected monarchs, or any tyrants, be it as gentle and as loving. And I don't think that we should be emulating loving tyrants and beneficent or benevolent dictators.
I think you're right. So yeah, hopefully we can put this one to rest, right?
I get very worked up over this because, the music and the spoken word, I played in the orchestra at Temple Square for many years. I've been through many of these music and the spoken word broadcasts personally. So when you elevate someone at the end of these broadcasts, you're shining a light on them and saying, this is the example for us to follow. Queen Elizabeth II, her entire construct of her entire existence is built on deception, and it's just all built on a lie. It's not right, and we shouldn't be lifting it up, shining a light on her and saying that's what we should be emulating, and that's what the church has continuously done. I get very worked up over this.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we hashed that out pretty heavily last week with regards to it, that the church or the purpose of a prophet and a church is to put the monarchy in its place, or the government in its place. I mean, regardless of whether it's a monarchy or a democracy, the purpose of the church is there to point everybody to, let's be more Christ-like, and let's be more holy than this. And we're not seeing that. Instead, we're seeing a lot more of, well, we're loyal subjects to whatever government our members are living under. So, and that's, I don't know, it just seems like a cowardly way to approach it.
Unless that government wants to eliminate polygamy, then we don't honor, sustain, and obey the law.
That's right. I mean, they had a big problem with Martin Van Buren, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it says we believe in honoring and sustaining the law. So okay, well, the Queen is the law, therefore we honor and sustain it. Unless we think about polygamy. Oh, then no, yeah. We're not going to do that. So there's big carve outs for there's big carve outs.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of caveats there, right?
Yeah, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm afraid that I am still extremely worked up over it. So it very greatly upsets me. So I guess we just need to move on. Otherwise,
next article.
Okay, our next one here. This is a little bit tamer. 20 September 2022, Elder Bednar answers questions live on Instagram. So
this is gutsy.
He fielded several questions during a live Instagram broadcast. This is the first time a leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has used the feature on the social media platform. So there's an 11-minute Q&A, and he's got his iPad out there, and he's fielding questions. I thought, okay, this is really progressive.
I wonder how broadly it was announced, because I mean I'm hearing about it after the fact, but I didn't hear about this before.
Well, you don't come to Instagrams, Al, because believe me, some of those kids out there, that they spend their entire life on Instagram.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, I went back and looked at these questions, and let me just read you some of the questions that he fielded during his 13 minutes of Q&A.
All right.
What's your favorite scripture?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What have you learned from being an apostle?
Yeah, that's a pretty decent question, but still, it's, okay.
I think that he learned how much was in Ensign Peak for number one. I think that's how I would have answered that.
Yeah, exactly.
He learned how much was in Ensign Peak. He also learned how much we're paying Curtin and McConkie, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do I choose a career?
Oh my goodness! Yeah, people are looking for some divine counseling here. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think if he was going to answer that, how do I choose a career? Well, if you want to end up in the highest leadership of the church, then you better you choose a career as you got three choices: a lawyer, a businessman, or an academic.
Yeah, and regardless, you need to either be born into or marry into one of the ruling families of Mormonism.
That certainly helps. That's it's hard. Yeah. So when it comes to choosing your career and a loved one, it helps to look in the well-trod paths.
Yeah.
Also, how do I increase my faith?
Okay.
So, to say that these are softball questions is an insult to softballs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the softball would have to be made out of Jell-O, green Jell-O with shredded carrots.
Oh man, yeah. Hey, it's a step in the right direction, but as most things with the church, it's such a baby step that it's hard to. I always just think what could be done with these Q&As. I didn't see any of these questions in the CES letter. There's a lot of questions out there that people really want answers to, that are really struggling with faith and with their lives and with their families. And I don't think it's how to choose a career. I don't think that is what that doesn't animate me, and I don't think it animates a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean it's very. I'm curious to see what their screening process was for the questions, because it seemed like they only let a select few through.
Yeah, probably. And that brings us to our Mormon News Roundup question of the week. This is an open-ended question. If you had the chance to be on Instagram Live, what would you ask Elder Bednar the next time he does an Instagram Live? And I'll just ask you that, Al. What if you had a chance to be unscreened? What question would you ask Elder Bednar the next time he does an Instagram Live?
That's a good question. Let's see what. I think I would ask him what he thinks of the Reddit phenomenon that keeps referring to him as Susan Bednar's husband.
That's really good. That is a really good question, honestly. Yeah.
We'll see if he addresses it.
That is a great question, Al, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's one that he can definitely answer, because he's not going to answer the most controversial stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just asking for his personal feelings on the matter.
Yeah.
I'm sure his little cheeks will get bright red, but okay.
I think that is a great question. And for our listeners out there, if you also have a question that you'd like to ask Elder Bettner the next time he does an Instagram Live, then head on over to Anchor and you can interact with us there. By the way, if you enjoy our content, then you can also head on over to Patreon. We have a couple of tier levels. You can make a donation if you really like what you hear. Now, our next article here is the church is donating more money. This is another, the church is really donating in the last couple of weeks here, Al. They donated $5 million to benefit the UNICEF's global malnutrition program. And it's going to help malnourished children who are 5 years old and up in 24 countries in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, the Middle East. And this link that we showed to you is the recorded remarks of Sharon Eubank, the director of the church's humanitarian services, which she shared in New York at the United Nations General Assembly side event with other nonprofits. So the church, they donated $32 million last week, $5 million this week. They are really, really Bring out the checkbook, Al.
Yeah, millions. But we are donating millions. Anyway, that's a pretty significant chunk of change. Sure, it's more than I'm worth. I mean, I'll never have $5 million to donate. Sure, but to UNICEF so that UNICEF can stop hunger. I'm okay. I just, not to to take to rain on the parade here, but doesn't the LDS Church have a whole humanitarian aid foundation that is supposed to look after feeding the hungry and looking after the needs of the needy?
Yeah, but the problem with that, Al, is that the church doesn't have the infrastructure in some of these countries. That's what UNICEF is in places
True.
where the church is not in.
All right.
So, they're not, especially in the Middle East, the church has virtually no presence in the Middle East. In a lot of countries, they're completely banned. So
that's right. It is a worldwide church that's been banned in several countries.
Well, I mean, all Christian religions are banned in Saudi. You can't do any proselytizing in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to reach the hungry in a lot of these, especially these Muslim-dominated countries, you're going to have to go through a UNICEF organization. You can't just do it directly. So
True.
I don't think that is a black mark against them. But I'm very pleased to see what we're seeing in the last couple of weeks. $32 million donation to the World World Food Program. I think it was last week. And to $5 million to UNICEF. Now, I want to give a lot of props to the church. That's great. I hopefully see a lot more of that. That's fantastic. But in the same week, Al, I found this article from the Gates Foundation. This isn't. I'm not trying to throw a cheap shot here. This just came across my news feed. In the same week that the church is donating this month $30 million, we have the Gates Foundation announcing $1.3 billion in financial aid to address poverty and social inequalities. And this was to the UN. This was as part of its annual Goalkeepers Report. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is they're emptying out their pockets $1.3 billion.
Yeah. And I mean, this is, I believe that the purpose behind this is, when they talk about equality, it's basically trying to make sure that people on the lower end of the financial spectrum don't get eliminated at the same time as people on the opposite end of the spectrum are getting ridiculously enriched. This is something that, like, during the Great Depression back in the 30s, you had Great Gatsby type parties being thrown in these huge mansions. The rich were still making tons of money back during the Great Depression. The only people that were suffering were the working class and the middle class. And they were starving to death, freezing to death in Hoovervilles. And so that's what this the Gates Foundation is trying to do, is trying to right that ship so that we don't have so much suffering and starvation on the bottom end while there's so much extravagance on the top end.
Yeah. And you need to understand that these two organizations are somewhat akin. We in our coordination call, we were looking up how much the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is worth. And Bill and Melinda Gates, I guess they're divorced now, divorced, or they are divorced. But
they're divorced, but they still work together with their foundation, right?
Right. And Bill Gates, he's worth like $70 billion, but I want to say that he's already pumped like $50 billion into his foundation. He's donated almost half of his worth into his foundation, and he continues to donate into his foundation. And that foundation is not just sitting on it for a rainy day. It is absolutely blowing through that money. Bill Gates has said that he wants to get himself off of the world's richest man lists. He's still in the top 10. He wants to get himself off of there as fast as he can. He's trying to spend his money just as fast as he possibly can. It's kind of like Richard Pryor. What was that movie where he had to spend all of his money?
Oh, Brewster's Millions.
Yeah.
Excellent movie to anybody that's looking for something good to watch. It's thought-provoking, but it's also hilarious because it's Richard Pryor.
Yeah, it is funny. But what I'm saying is that the church and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're on approximately equal footing, even though the church has more than the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Ensign Peak is down. We know Ensign Peak is down. It was probably, the Widows Might report said that it might have peaked out at 180 billion, but it's probably down. It's probably somewhere in maybe 120 billion. And then the church is the number one holder of real estate in the United States, worth at least 100 billion in real estate. So the church is about 3 times larger than the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and yet their donation is 5 million when compared to 1.3 billion of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What is wrong with this picture?
It's a little lopsided, isn't it?
A little.
Yeah. A little being like, yeah, billions of lopsidedness here. I mean, the margin there is ridiculous. I mean, most people can't even fathom what $1 billion actually is. It's 1,000 times a million. I mean, and how much is $1 million? It's like, a hotel or something. Like, a church building, maybe $1 million, and 1,000 of those. The worth of it. I mean, where do you fit 1,000 churches anyway? But I mean, yeah, this is the amount of disparity between what the Gates Foundation is doing versus what the church is doing. There's a big divide there, big chasm, and the church could do a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing more than they ever have before. This is also in the same week, Al. I didn't share this to you before, but the world, Pakistan just got, with all the floods, 33 million people have been affected by all of those horrible floods over in Pakistan. There's over 2,000 people that are dead. And what did the church do? From my perspective, they haven't done very much, but the World Food Bank did. They pledged $2 billion to aid the flood hit in Pakistan just recently in 25 September 2022. So you're seeing you're seeing all of these organizations that are committing vast amounts of money. They are just emptying out. When people give money to the World Food Bank or to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's why Warren Buffett, he I think recently just gave like $2.7 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because he knows when he gives that to them, it's going to be spent to alleviate human suffering and help the people on this planet. We're seeing the big players out there really digging deep and helping other humans, and we are seeing a $5 million donation to UNICEF.
Yeah, I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but it's a baby step. Okay? It's a baby step. And I mean, like I said, if it was me or you, $5 million is a huge donation, but this isn't you and me. This is like hundreds of billions of dollars of value that the church has, and 5 million is going to that. I mean, yeah, let me tell you, your average LDS faithful member that's paid tithing this week paid more of a percentage towards the church than the church paid recently towards helping UNICEF.
Just the church takes in somewhere in a neighborhood of 100. We'll call it just a nice round number here, Al. We'll say that the church takes in $100 million a week in tithing. It's a little bit more than that, but let's just make that a nice round number.
Okay.
So this week they took in $100 million in tithing, and they gave $5 million to UNICEF. The last week they brought in $100 million in tithing, and they gave 33. So if you total them all together, we have $200 million in tithing for the last 2 weeks, and they donated $38 million out of that. That's what is that? 10? That's 15%. That's not enough.
Yeah, it's tithing. Okay.
That's not enough. That's not enough.
Not enough.
They're making strides. Let's hope that they make some more strides.
Yeah, because I mean, that's just is this something that they're going to commit to going forward? Because they're going to continue to bring in 100 million plus a week, right? So, if they'll commit to going $30 million or to $40 million every 2 weeks, then okay.
I mean, the church basically is bringing in about $20 million every single day. Every day it's bringing in like 20 million in tithing and fast offerings and other things. So to say that, we're doing 5 million here or 30 million there, you're bringing in $20 million a day. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Signature Books, www.signaturebooks.com. We invite you to check out their latest book written by Romney Burke, which is entitled Susie Young Gates, Daughter of Mormonism.
Brigham Young had over 50 wives and 56 children, but none has better name recognition than daughter Susie Young Gates. She lived from 1856 and died in 1933. Yet she, like so many women of Mormonism's past, has remained a mystery to most church members. In Susie Young Gates, Romney Burke, the author, paints a portrait of a strong woman who rose to prominence within the church, fought for the rights of women throughout the country, yet dealt with personal trials and her share of heartbreak.
Okay, now our next article here is a tweet here by one of our favorite tweeters, which is Ryan Birch here. He put out a tweet here on September 21st, 2022. He's a famous researcher who does a lot of quantitative polls and statistics here. And he said that there's no, he asked a bunch of different religions and a bunch of different groups whether they trust that whether most people can be trusted or you can't be too careful in dealing with people. And he asked Mormons, Jews, agnostic, atheists, Muslims, Catholics, Protestants, nothing in particular, or something else. What did he find about the trust levels among all these different groups, Hal?
The LDS are the most trusting. The faithful LDS are the most trusting of any group of people, followed by the Jewish people. So it's interesting. I was kind of surprised that Jewish people was second. But yeah, I'm not really all that surprised that the LDS are the most trusting.
Now, why does that not surprise you? Why?
Because I live in the state of Utah, where we prey on suckers with multi-level marketing scams like crazy, and I mean the fraud level in the state is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that's because people trust each other.
Well, let me ask you, Al, if the fraud level in the state is so high, why wouldn't Latter-day Saints then be saying, well, I don't trust other people because we've seen so many scams? Why does it continue to remain high, even though Utah's the multi-level marketing capital of the world and one of the biggest scam capitals of the world? How does it continue to stay so high?
Yeah, they keep falling for the same scams. I mean, that's one of the things. It's one scam to another. It's just like, I mean, each one of these multi-level marketing things is, okay, well, you know what, selling Avon didn't work out so well for me, so I'm going to try going and selling essential oils now. Well, that didn't work out so hot, so I got to find something else to, and if I can get them to just get, 3 of their friends to go out and sell, then I can make promises that their 3 friends will make money, and then they're going to make commissions off of their 3 friends' sales, and so on and so on. It's just like, this whole thing is just, it is too good to be true. But there's some people that just love to believe. Yeah.
It's just really puzzling for me. I didn't think the Latter-day Saints would be so high. But one of the reasons I do think that they're so high is the fact that the church has set up a paradigm where it says you need to trust other people. You need to trust teachers, your ministering appointments. You need to trust your bishop. You need to trust your elders quorum president, your Relief Society president. You need to trust your stake president. And then not only that, you need to trust all those people, but not only that, the most important people to trust is the quorum of the 15. The Lord will never let the church be led astray. So you really have to bake into your entire theology, your paradigm, your way of life that you need to trust other people. If you're a garden variety Baptist, you don't have to trust your minister because you're going directly to God. You're saved with Jesus and you're worshiping Jesus. You can do it in your own house. You don't need to trust anyone else.
That's right. But with the LDS Church, it's a little different. And, I don't know how many times I've heard people around here, around the state of Utah say, well, so-and-so, they're a member of the church, so they couldn't possibly be, a con artist or, running a scam. I'm just like, you don't think so?
Yeah. I don't know.
Just because it's Thomas Monson's grandson or nephew or whatever that's running the company that you're working for, doesn't mean that it's all on the up and up.
Yeah, when you appeal to authority and you appeal to priesthood position, when you make those kind of things, and then you also are appealing to people's pocketbooks, it's kind of hard to separate all of those things out.
Yeah, it is for sure.
That's the problem. And people, like I said, people pay their tithing to the church, and they just have to trust that, trust us that we're going to do good things with the tithing. You just always have to be trusting of the church and the church's leaders. You just always built on, you also have to trust the scriptures. You have to trust that those prophets who wrote the scriptures, that they really did have divine experiences. It's all based on trust of other people.
Yeah, and I mean, we could say that the LDS are very faithful people because when it comes to trusting other people, you're also putting your faith in them, right? So it's kind of on a similar level. As the more faith that you have in your fellow men, then the more righteous you are. Could that be that's what's going on here? Is that this is a mark of how to Yeah, mark. I love, no pun intended there, but a mark of how to say how faithful and spiritual and righteous a person is.
In some ways it is. For instance,
Mhm.
when Gordon B. Hinckley said that you can't have more than two piercings,
Yeah.
to women, some women would took out their second or third or whatever piercing it
Yeah.
was, and you're
Hmm.
really trusting in him. So a matter of your faithfulness is to trust the prophet. The more you follow the prophet, the
Hmm.
more you trust the prophet, the more you trust those other people, the more faithful that you are, and the more likely it is that you're going to go to heaven. It's all built into a system that says
Yeah.
trust other people. You
Hmm.
can't be the church really teaches people that you can't be trusted on your own to have a relationship with God. You need to
Hmm.
have all of these people who are there along the way to help you with your relationship with God.
Hmm. Exactly.
You know.
That kind of takes us over to our next article a little bit, I think, when it comes to trusting people that claim to speak for God.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we're going to Florida this time. We're going to jump out of the state of Utah. Well, it's not really the state of Utah, although it's predominantly LDS, but we're going to jump over to Florida, where we got LDS leaders have joined with an open letter to Floridians, all about how they're calling for peace with the LGBTQ community. This is from qsaltlake.com. Just a staff member wrote it from September 21st. It says, those of us from faith traditions believe that we are all created by a loving God who has commanded us to love each other. And that quote, it comes from one of the Area 70 from the state of Florida. So yeah, when we go over to Florida, we've got across the state. There's this big document that was put out, and it's a call for people to call for peace, to not discriminate against the LGBTQ community. Is that across the board, like anywhere,
Well,
D-Vase?
I like what I'm hearing so far.
Yeah.
I like what you told me. It says those of us from faith traditions believe that we are all created by a loving God who has commanded us to love one another. That's nice, and
Hmm.
that we peace with the LGBTQ community. I can think of no other community that needs more peace than the LGBTQ community.
Oh yeah.
I like what I'm hearing so far. Now, this letter comes 5 months after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the Parental Rights in Education law. What is that, Al?
Yeah, so this was where the "Don't Say Gay" came from, where
Right.
students aren't allowed to be in the closet at home while being open at school. You
And
know,
even one step further, it says that the teachers can't even say gay. So you can't,
yeah,
like, you got to have a kindergarten group and you couldn't read a book that had gay characters in it, for instance, because you don't
mhm,
say gay. Teachers can't say gay. No one can say gay.
yeah,
Okay. It's kind of like the ultimate don't ask, don't tell sort of thing. Now,
yeah,
all of this sounds really good until you really dig a little bit deep. And if you read this second paragraph from the full letter, I think it kind of clues us in as to what is going on with this particular letter. And it says, quote, "It is time to assert clearly that we believe in the values of freedom, equality, and fairness for all. We join a growing number of faith and community leaders from around the country in supporting non-discrimination legislation that protects all people from discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, while protecting important religious rights." End quote. Doesn't that sound good, Al? Is that good, or doesn't that
Well,
sound good?
I think the most important and key phrase at the end is that while also right at the end there,
Uh huh.
while also protecting important religious rights.
Oh, and what might those rights be?
The right to discriminate against people for being of the
Unfortunately,
LGBTQ community.
exactly. I know I'm laughing about this, but this is not good. So yeah, so the church is signing on to this because it's saying we want legislation that protects people from discrimination in employment. That's fine. The church doesn't really. The church is
Yeah.
exempt from those type of laws because it's a private organization. They
Mhm.
don't need to worry about that. And housing
Yeah.
and public accommodations, again, the church is not involved with that. The church
Hmm.
wants to protect its important religious rights, and those
Yeah.
rights, with regards to the LGBTQ community, is to uh, uh, not
Mhm.
give them any rights in the church or give them
Yeah.
diminished rights in the church.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when it comes to like, say, real estate, okay, the church may own an apartment building, and the church can rent out to LGBTQ people, and it doesn't really mind because, well, at the end of the day, it's the church's pocketbook that's getting lined with the LGBTQ's rent money. So yeah, okay, fine. We don't need to discriminate there, but we want to make sure that when on the the facade side of this, the part that's open to the public where everybody can see, oh no, the church has standards, and those standards involve people being exactly the same and identifying with the sex that they were assigned at birth throughout their lives. So
Yeah, this is the same thing that the church has done. We covered this already in Georgia. They've done it in Arizona. They've done it in Utah, and they also have done it on the national stage by backing the so-called Fairness for All legislation, which has passed through the House but is stalled in the Senate. It's probably going nowhere in the Senate. But I want to read one more thing from this article. It says, quote, "No one should be denied protections based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, and likewise, religious persons and institutions should be protected in practicing their faith." So it wants to encapsulate in law the ability for churches and other religious institutions to discriminate against LGBTQ persons in particular, and have that codified into law so that those persons cannot bring lawsuits against those institutions.
Yeah, this is really something. I mean, I guess I understand when we did our coordination call, we were talking about, well, this isn't a member of the First Presidency or any like really high up church leader. These guys are, local area 70s, are probably with the third or fourth quorum of the 70, but that signed it. But even so, I can see why the church is signing on to this and saying, okay, yeah, because up front it looks like, oh, here's a pro LGBTQ rights piece of legislation that we'd like to get passed. But really, all it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is a bill to protect religious right to discrimination under the guise of saying, oh, yeah, we can't, public places shouldn't be allowed to discriminate against LGBTQ people no more than they're allowed to discriminate against people because of their religious beliefs, right?
Right. They want to, it's fine. Public institutions, government, and schools and things like that. They should never discriminate against LGBTQ persons. But private institutions and religions, they should be able to. That's what it all boils down to. So when you read that, and that's what this has been a consistent message from the church for years.
Yeah. So I mean, don't get your hopes up, listener, thinking that this is the church taking a step in the right direction. This is very much the church maintaining the line here that they've towed all along. Yeah.
And speaking of LGBTQ issues, there was an article here that was dropped on Billboard.com by Glenn Rowley on September 21st, 2022. And it says, David Archuleta talks faith in me, embrace and standing up to LGBTQ bullies. And this is really making a lot of headlines because David Archuleta, he's got to be among the most famous of all Latter-day Saints out there. There can't be very many more people out there who are more famous than he is.
I'd say that's probably right. He's, it was a contestant on American Idol, and that's where he got his start. And he made it pretty big. He's had a pretty successful career. I believe that he put his career on hold to serve a mission.
Yep.
And then after he came home from his mission, he came out as homosexual, I believe he is. And now he's, decided that he's embracing that, and it's come to a little bit of a, what would you say? There's kind of this headbutting between how he identifies, or who he is versus the church that he grew up in and embraced and really loved.
Yeah, I want to say that he came out last year, and I believe I don't. You can't quote me 100% on this, but I believe that he basically came out and said that he is not strictly heterosexual. I think that's the way that he phrased it.
I see. Okay.
I believe so. I'm not 100%, but from the article though, it says that the interviewer asked him and said, it looks like you've gotten some distance from the turmoil you were feeling last year, because when he was coming out last year, he was in great amount of turmoil.
Oh yeah.
His response is very instructive. He said, quote, yeah, it's kind of like, this is what it feels like when you're not in the turmoil and feeling like, what's wrong with me? You're just kind of like, oh, maybe there isn't something wrong with me and I can just enjoy who I am. And I don't have to feel like I'm a horrible, evil person just because of this. Maybe I can just be happy. And that's kind of where I'm at with this release, end quote. How do you feel about that statement?
I think that's what everybody yearns for. I mean, that sounds to me like somebody who's finally become comfortable in their own skin. So good for him. I mean, I really applaud him. And I think that's what a lot of people I've heard similar sentiments expressed by people that have left the church. That finally they feel happy and they feel comfortable in their own skin, free to be who they are and what they want to be. So good for them.
It's taken him years. Now, I'm sure that it took him years just to come out.
Yeah.
And then it's taken a couple of years after that. This is just an incredibly challenging thing for someone to go through, especially considering how high profile he is. He was featured on the church's newsroom. He was featured in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. He was featured even on, I believe, on the church's social media accounts for some time. He's high profile that he feels like, if he's coming out, then he's coming out against the church. And that's not something that he ever wanted to do.
No, I mean, this is the guy that the church used for their soundtrack on the Meet the Mormons video. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah. He used the Glorious single there, which I think was like one of the top Billboard singles.
Yeah. So this is not a person who just, has an axe to grind or wants to hate the church or wants to leave it. This is somebody that's really struggling to find. I mean, he knows where the church stands, and now he knows where he is, and he knows that the two are on opposite sides now.
Yeah, in fact, from the article, I want to read this too. He said, quote, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was my everything. I did everything for it. I sacrificed so much because that was my number one. I was like, this is more important than my career, than any relationship I could have. This is my number one thing. And now I'm just kind of like thrown for a loop.
Yeah, this is, that poor kid. I my heart goes out to him. I know that kind of frustration and that that dark place that you have to walk through in order to get to the light. So yeah, that I certainly sympathize with where Dave Archuleta is coming from.
Yeah, and his comments have still been extremely tempered. He's not going after, you contrast him with David Lance Black, Dustin Lance Black from Under the Banner of Heaven, who's also gay, by the way. If you look at the difference between their rhetoric, it is night and day. So he's trying to just say, I want to be me. I want to be loved for who I am. I don't want to be, consider myself to be a horrible, bad person. I sacrifice so much for the church. It's still really important to me, but I have to be able to live my life.
Yeah, it's almost like he's trying to break up with a girlfriend, but still stay friends, right? Like, hey, I think you're a great person. You're just not for me, but I hope that we can still be friends, And
that is a perfect, you sum things up so well. That is absolutely.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah, that is absolutely perfect. That's right. Yeah. Okay, so we'll be following that. We'll let you know. And that does bring us to our feature article, which is Sins Are Our Mother, episode 2. And in this mini series here, it's as Lori's behavior and her bizarre ranking system raised concerns for her family, chilling discoveries come to light. This is on Netflix here. Did you watch episode 2, Al?
All right. So I have a confession to make, D-Vase. I was so enthralled with this last week. I struggled so hard to not binge through the whole thing after watching the first episode. After we did last week's show, I binged through the whole thing. Okay, I've seen all of it now. But I did rewatch episode 2 because I felt the need to.
So did I. I rewatched episode 2 as well. This is how, I never rewatch anything, Al, but I rewatched episode 2. That's how good this is.
Oh my goodness. And it is, and it's loaded. And especially after, we're going to get into the Deseret News response to this, but okay, just to give a little bit of a summary of episode 2, it starts off where Lori's brother, Alex, has just murdered her, or not, well, I guess we could say murdered, although that it was said it was done in self-defense, so they didn't really do much of an investigation into it. But he shot her husband, Charles Vallow, twice in the chest. They later on find out that he was shot the second time while he was on the ground. So it sounds to me like that's kill shot, just to make sure that he's done. But then it goes all through what's going on with Lori making these strange accusations against her husband, against her family members. Let's see, her brother is it Andy? or
there's
Adam, I
Alex,
think it is.
Alex and Adam. So
Adam,
the episode opens up. We've got Charles Vallow. He's dead, and Lori. Her reaction to this is she's extremely calm. She doesn't even seemingly care about her husband who was just gunned down by her brother.
And they may, I think they're separated, but they're not ex-husband and wife. I mean, they're still married. This is just she recently moved to Chandler, Arizona, like a couple weeks before. They have like the police body cam footage, and the house, like there's no furniture in the house. They're not even moved in. And yeah, she's like, oh yeah, I'm my ex-husband, and I've moved out here, and like, well, he's dead. She's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then she lies to different people about how her husband died.
Yeah,
she tells some of them that there's a heart attack, and then she tells other people that he committed suicide.
Yeah, and so it's like, what the heck is going on? Why are you lying about this? Like, what's the purpose behind the lies? I mean, sure, maybe it's not the most glamorous thing to say, hey, my brother got into an argument with my husband, and my husband went at him with a baseball bat, so my brother shot him. I mean, maybe you don't want to explain it that way, but I don't know. The whole lying, and if you're going, that's the problem is when you start lying, then what's the truth, and how do you keep tabs on what the truth is when in the midst of all the lies? And I don't think Lori Vallow Daybell is doing very well at that, because they get into all the texting back and forth between her and Chad Daybell. And yeah, there's something going on right after that whole death of her husband. And it doesn't take long for her to decide, well, yeah, I'm going to move up to Rexburg, Idaho, and I'm going to marry this guy whose wife recently died.
Yeah, let's get into that. Let's get into that in a second here. But Lori, she as soon as her husband is gunned down, she immediately goes for the life insurance, and oops, she's no longer the beneficiary.
Oh, isn't that suspicious?
Whoops.
He just happened to change the beneficiary on his life insurance like a month or two before she had him killed, or her brother killed him, and she fully expected that she was still the primary beneficiary, that she had $1 million policy coming her way.
Oops, I guess she didn't.
Yeah.
And then you're right. She marries Chad Daybell right afterwards. I mean, goes out to Hawaii and marries another man immediately thereafter.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and then the local police, they're trying to find out, so where's your kids at, Lori? And she's like, well, my friend, she's like, well, we were trying to find your kids. We went over and saw your brother Alex. He had a friend there. She's like, oh, that's probably Chad. And they're like, really, Chad Daybell? And they're like, yeah. Isn't he the guy whose wife just recently died? Like, even the local police know like who Chad Daybell is.
Yeah. So she's watching over. Lori is watching over her kids, including Tylee, who's her niece, right? Or Tylee is her
Tylee? Yeah, Tylee's her daughter. Well, yeah.
Well, I think Tylee is her stepdaughter. It's either her stepdaughter or her daughter, and her children had disappeared, and yet somehow her children are still texting other people.
Yeah. So she has, we've been following her son, her oldest son, not JJ, but let's see, is it JJ? Yeah, it's JJ.
I believe so, JJ.
Let's see, what is the oldest son's name? I can't remember, but he's kind of one of the main voices in all this, because he gives us a pretty clear view of how this whole thing was happening. And it seems like there was kind of a distancing from him after he married his girlfriend, and who's now his wife. And after that, it seems like Lori just kind of distanced herself from him a little bit. And but not so noticeably that there was like animosity. It's just that she didn't really come around that often, or text him all that often. So he's getting like he's watching this whole thing go down, and I mean, he loves his siblings, Tylee and JJ. So he's trying to, keep up with them and see what's going on. And around September of 2019, he's trying to keep in touch. And this is just after they moved up to Rexburg. He's trying to keep in touch with his sister, who's supposed to be going to not Rex College anymore. It's BYU Idaho now. And it doesn't seem like it's her on the other end of the text messages.
No.
Also because, I mean, you know how people have their own text, and some
Yep.
people are real particular about punctuation, capitalization, spelling, and etc. And other people that are just like, okay, I want to get the information out, so I'm just going to do all lowercase and no punctuation whatsoever. Well, that's not really Tylee's style at all.
No, so the fake texts from Tylee are starting to raise concerns. And that's when also they discover that Lori has been using a light and dark spirit classification system, that she thinks certain people around her are on some bizarre scale of either being light or dark, and that some people are actually zombies, and that they need to be killed in order for the zombies to be eliminated.
Yeah, because
some
the
really
zombies,
sick stuff.
Yeah, the zombies is basically like, oh, a dark spirit has taken over a light person. So, like, say, for instance, if Tylee, the daughter of Lori Vallow, had been a light person growing up, and then all of a sudden a dark spirit comes into her life and takes her over, then she becomes a zombie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And so she marries Chad Daybell immediately after Charles Vallow gets shot. They move up. They just hightail it out of there. They move up to Rexburg, and then all of a sudden, at around the same time or slightly before that, Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell's wife, she dies kind of mysteriously in the middle of the night, and leaves him for almost $500,000 in life insurance.
Yeah. Exactly. $430,000 life insurance policy that just happens to go to Chad Daybell. So he's set.
Yeah, my goodness, how many people are going to die in this series?
A lot.
Chad is preaching. He's got apocalyptic rhetoric. He thinks that the July 2020 is going to be the end of the world.
Yeah. July 22nd, 2020 is supposed to be the end of the world. Now, here's the thing about these doomsday cults that call out the end of the world, because there was a big one during the 2012, the Mayan calendars, that was going to be the end of the world, but it didn't. Let's see, I think the Campbellites also had another one or something. There's been several cults over the history of the world that have predicted the end, and it never happens for some reason.
No, it hasn't. And the craziest thing about all of this is, through all of these predictions, through all of the murders, and we're just getting started. Lori, she's still going to the LDS temple regularly through all of this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she doesn't see anything wrong with that.
No.
This is just, her husband just got shot by her brother. It was in self-defense, so it's okay. I'm sure that her brother's still temple worthy too after that, because it's not murder, right?
I don't think they took the oath of vengeance out for Hiram and Joseph Smith in 1930, but I bet Lori wouldn't have had a problem swearing that one.
Oh, not at all. I mean, no, Lori, she's got a very interesting personality and her perspective here. Like they reference, she had a podcast with another friend down there in Arizona, and they would get on and talk about some weird stuff. How she was like this warrior that had been in this battle between good and evil for millennia, and she was a really special person. That's kind of the thing, is like, you get narcissists out there, and everything's really all about them and how special they are and how unique they are. So when it comes to like Chad Daybell's whole structure of how you designate a person as a light or a dark spirit, they had that whole thing, and this was discovered because Charles Vallow found that in the communication from Chad Daybell to Lori, and forwarded it on to her son, who at the time, he's like, I didn't want to get into it because, whatever he's sending to me, he's like, look, this is your marriage. You guys got to figure it out. I've got my own wife and kid that I'm dealing with here. I can't be in the middle of you guys' stuff. And then they're like, well, what happened? Like, he's dead. My uncle shot him. Why? So they're starting to dig into it and go through those emails. And then they find out, there's a whole structure system here for light versus dark spirits, and how far away they are. It's like you have like 0 point, right? Kind of like the pH scale. And then on the left-hand side, you got dark spirits, and dark is 1 degree away from 0, which is neutral. And then like 6 being the full extent. I'm sure that's where Satan is, right? The worst you can be of dark spirits. And then on the opposite end, you have the same thing. A light spirit of a category 1 would be, 1 degree towards the light. basically offensive, but not all that great. And the most holy of holy, the Jesus Christ of people, will be the the 6 lights. So it's interesting. I mean, the way that they've got this whole thing laid out.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's also sick and twisted. Now, the body count so far in this miniseries is Lori's husband is dead, and also Chad's wife is dead. But the body count is not going to stop there because Lori's children, she has her 2 children, they have not been seen for months. And Lori's grandmother, Kay Woodcock, she calls the police because no one has seen Lori's kids for months.
Yeah. And Lori just keeps telling them, oh, yeah, the kids are fine. They're safe. They're happy. And she just keeps saying this weird stuff. And, like, you hear her talk about it, and you're like, she never says that her kids are alive. She says that they're safe. She says they're happy.
Yeah.
But she never says that they're not dead. And
goodness.
That's what's really sickening is like you start to watch some of the doublespeak come out or talking around issues. Because then she starts saying, well, okay, so Kate Woodcock sends the police over to do a welfare check on Tylee and JJ because nobody's seen them. The police are like, okay, where's the kids? Lori says, oh, they're with my friend down in Arizona. The friend calls them up and it's like, why are you telling the police that I've got your kids?
No, nobody can find these kids. It's a big shell game. And while these kids are missing and the suspicion is growing, at the same time, Lori's brother Alex dies of a blood clot. The same guy that killed her husband.
Yeah, the guy that killed her husband has blood clots in his lungs, which Lori's mom says runs in the family. Okay. It's still a little convenient that he happens to die at that same time, and it might be. It certainly could be a coincidence.
There's a lot of coincidences in this particular miniseries.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Is like in all of this, that might be the one thing that maybe that's the one person she didn't have killed on purpose. But the rest of them, she sure had killed on purpose, and there's no question in my mind about that.
Yeah, and so the Lori and Chad, they're to escape the Idaho scrutiny, which is closing on. They go to Hawaii, but the police catch up with them, serve them a court order, say, "Hey, you have to produce your kids in the next couple of days." She can't do it, and then she's arrested and thrown in jail, and that's where we're left at the end of episode 2. Yeah.
And that's so we begin with the death of her husband. We end with the death of her brother. And then, this whole thing of you got 7 days to produce your kids and she can't do it or won't do it. And nobody knows. I mean, they're hoping that she just won't do it. And that's what everybody's hoping. That's what the grandparents are hoping. That's what the viewers are hoping. That's what everybody that's watching this case is hoping is that, she just won't produce the kids, but hopefully the kids are hidden somewhere in like an underground bunker. Because, I mean, these people, the cult that they're in, it's a real like doomsday prepper type place where you're sure that there's like, Connex containers buried in the backyard where, they could live out for 100 years on food storage and rice and beans. Right. But that's, it's weird. So the glaring thing that's missing in all of this that the Deseret News points out.
Yeah, there's a Deseret News article on this. What does this all have to do with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Well, we got an official reply in the Deseret News.
Yeah, the official reply from the Deseret News says that, there's in the family tree of the Cox family, which is Lori's birth family, we have her mother. We've talked to her dad. Her dad doesn't really say much throughout this series, but her mother's kind of the main focus. We have Lori. We have her 2 brothers, Adam and Alex. But there's another person in this family that we just kind of skip over.
Uh-oh.
Lori's got an oldest sister.
Ooh.
And this is the oldest sister who it's her daughter that's Lori's niece that is wrapped up in this cult with Lori.
Okay.
So she's connected there, but at the same time, according to the Deseret News article, she's a late sister, so she's already deceased.
Okay.
And unless the Deseret News is trying to paint the picture of, hey, Lori may have another victim out there, and it's her oldest sister, I don't see what the whole point is of bringing that up because she's not really involved because she's dead.
Yeah, I mean, so Hannah Syriac for the Deseret News says, the sins of our mother omitted a child from the family tree. This error has bigger implications than you might think. Actually, this error has smaller implications than I thought.
It has no implications. What's the implication? They don't say what the implication is.
What I mean, what is the deal? So you didn't mention this family tree is extremely thick. There's a lot of people in this series and a lot of people dying. Not mentioning somebody is hardly cause for concern.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, here's the other thing. Okay, Lori's niece, her husband is brought up in episode 2. Okay, he's got a French last name. Is it Boudreau, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody takes a pot shot at him, and he's pretty sure that it was Alex in Chad Daybell's Jeep, because Chad Daybell owns a gray Jeep, and this gray Jeep pulls up behind his car. The back window opens on this Jeep, and he sees the muzzle of a gun, and a shot goes and blows out one of the windows on his car, and then the Jeep takes off. So he's like, I'm pretty sure that Alex Cox just tried to kill me, even though he's not sure it was Alex Cox. But later on we looked through the whole thing, and we got Lori, who refers to her brother Alex as her hitman. So I mean, there's too many pieces that line up, right? And they did find that the Jeep that drove by his place was Chad Daybell's Jeep. So, and somebody tried to murder her niece's husband, right, or ex-husband at that point. I mean, but what does her mother have to do with it? What does Lori's sister have to do with it?
I don't know.
I mean, seriously, if you're going to implicate Lori in the murder of her sister, implicate her. Give us something, but don't say, oh, yeah, this is a big deal, and then give us nothing, because that's not a big deal. That's a big nothing sandwich.
We discussed Under the Banner of Heaven in depth. We reviewed basically every single episode, and the church gave a couple of responses to Under the Banner of Heaven, and I thought that those responses that the church gave were actually really good.
Yeah.
They pointed out there was one response where they said, hey, there's been some inaccuracy. Some of the history is not right. And they actually refuted some of the history and said you didn't get it right. Then there was another one that says that Brenda Lafferty's sister doesn't think that you represented her properly and that you're desecrating her memory. So I don't have a problem with the church responding to a TV program, a miniseries, or anything else if they have something good to say. This is not one of those cases. The church is out in left field on this one.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, I completely agree. The church had some really good points in their response to Under the Banner of Heaven. I don't see any good points in this article that was posted in the Deseret News. So, that points out, hey, there's a big glaring missing person. Yeah, she's dead. When did she die? I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I think we pretty well covered it. Anything else from your end, D-Base?
No, sir. Hey, join us again next week where we will be reviewing the season finale of Sins of Our Mother, episode 3.
Yep, and next week is General Conference, so it's going to be a big one, I'm sure.
Ignite your momentum, Al. Are you ready to ignite your momentum, Al?
It's ignited. I am so raring to go on this. I mean, there's been so many. I've seen so many predictions regarding this General Conference. I'm just so excited to see what happens.
Yeah, we covered, I think it was 2 episodes ago, the dream headlines of what General Conference could be. There's also a website out there, Al, where they predict the temple predictions, and they do it based off of a statistical method. We didn't have time to get into it today. It's LDS. It's LDS Church at LDS Church Growth at blogspot.com and something like that. And they are actually quite good at predicting where the temples are going to be if you get into that kind of thing.
We'll have to go out there and check it out. So, hey, all right.
I'm predicting a third temple in Provo. That's where
the growth is.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll predict one in Nibley, Utah, just because I think Cache County needs a third temple up there.
Okay.
They're building a second one.
Predictions. We'll see it.
Yep. All right. So, hey, big shout out to Weird Alma for letting us use his music for this episode and all our others. Thanks so much for ruminating with us on the Great and Spacious Beehive. And remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
Yeah.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a being with no moral constraints. My number one goal is to hurt the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.